Now, retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Aguilar graced our screen not once but twice over the last 12 months. He's the retired US soldier and former worker at the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and I'll be talking to him about Gaza. But first, Lieutenant Colonel, people say that God invented war so that the Americans could learn geography. But there was quite a bit of geographical scattergunning going on at Davos by your esteemed or not President Donald Trump. He couldn't quite get his Azerbaijan quite right, and he wasn't clear who Azerbaijan had been fighting, but he was clear about one thing. He's taking Greenland. Is he?
Well, good morning to you, George, and good afternoon from here on the U.S. East Coast. And yeah, the stem winder that we all witnessed of the U.S. president in Davos was an embarrassment to the American people. It was an embarrassment on the world stage. And though he reassured the European leaders that we would not use force to take Greenland, he then doubled down with the notion that we would be taking it one way or another. This is a man that cannot be trusted. If you look at U.S. action in Venezuela, the administration, to include from the very top, the commander-in-chief, Donald Trump, still called Venezuela, it wasn't an invasion. It was serving an arrest warrant. So if I were Denmark and European leaders, I'd be very cautious and security-minded as to what actions our president may take. We do know that 2 weeks ago, he did give order to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the commander of Joint Special Operations Command to begin drafting plans for what that might look like. So is he thinking it? Yes. Is he putting direct action toward achieving some type of operation in Greenland? Yes. Should Europe be concerned, and should we see this as a drastic departure from any type of international norm? Yes. And we should take it seriously, just like we should have taken Venezuela seriously, just like we should have taken his plans to turn Gaza into a real estate venture and make rich people richer. We should believe him. The world should believe him, and we should take action to stop it.
Well, of course, Mark Carney said many dazzlingly important things, but he and Mark Rutte and Macron, in leaked texts with Donald Trump, leaked by Donald Trump, I should say, have all been caught saying, essentially, we supported you in your brigandry in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Venezuela, against Cuba, and all the other madcap escapades that your country has been on. We did everything we were asked of, and now you're turning on us. And that's beyond the pale. They were all saying, we supported you killing brown people, but now you're threatening to kill white people. That's about the size of it, isn't it?
That is a cogent way to synopsize what we've seen in these threats, especially when it comes to Greenland, and the European leaders saying that we've gone along with what's happened in the Middle East, with what's happened in Southeast Asia. We've gone along with it, and now you're turning on us. That's where you break the rules of the club. And I've read some in American media that there's this deep state, or that there's something amiss. And what I would like to say to all Americans, and to really anyone in the world, this is not deep state. This is the shallow end of the kiddie pool on a Utopia of the Seas cruise line, where the parents aren't watching. There is nothing deceitful about this. They are being upfront. They are telling us exactly what they're going to do. Trump has made it clear to not only European leaders, but also to the United States, that part of the reason he wants to take a sovereign territory from a NATO ally is because his feelings are hurt about the Nobel Peace Prize. That he suspects that Greenland should belong to the United States because of this. He's repeatedly painted Greenland as this de facto part of North America, dating all the way back to the Nazi era. And his history is incomplete and incorrect. The advisors around him are providing him with bad advice. If I put my loved one into a nursing home and that loved one consistently escaped and harassed the neighborhood, I wouldn't necessarily blame him alone. I would blame the staff. The staff around him, to include our Congress, to include his cabinet, are just as complicit. And America is really waking up to it, especially in these last few days with the president's remarks in Davos.
Well, of course, one of the things he said today was channeling World War II. You're a military hero. Even I was a boy soldier. Even at the age of 71, I'm ready to fight to defend my country if it is invaded. But Donald Trump, of course, has no such track record. 7 deferments to his call-up to Vietnam. But one of the things he was doing was channeling World War II and the spirit of it. He was right to point out that Denmark capitulated to the Nazis in 6 hours. He might well have added that the Danes provided quite a fair number of volunteers to the SS. They were the blonde, blue-eyed Aryans of Hitler's fevered imagination, after all. He might well have made a point that the United States had to seize Greenland because of the Danish capitulation to Hitler. But one of the hilarious things he said was, if it wasn't for us, you'd all be speaking German. But of course, everybody in Davos does speak German. Switzerland has a 60% German-speaking population. So it's not just geographically that he's challenged, it's historically and anthropologically, isn't it?
Yeah, it's wildly inaccurate in terms of, even when he tries to cut a jab or poke at sentiment, he's still off the mark. We see this in many of his comments here in the United States. And I hold this to be true. And I think that this is something that we should test in the US Congress and with the cabinet of the United States, especially in the executive branch, because I do think it would prevent war. That a large map be laid out, it have no labels, and if you can point out on the map the war or the country you're talking about invading and taking without having it labeled or without having someone point it out for you, then maybe we can consider some type of military action. I still fail to believe that Donald Trump does not know the difference between Greenland or Iceland. I fail to believe that Donald Trump knows the difference between the West Bank and Gaza. I fail to believe that if you were to lay a map of the Levant without labels, that he could not point out Syria as opposed to Jordan or Iraq or Afghanistan. I don't have trust in the astuteness, in the awareness, and the education and experience of our leaders, because Donald Trump has been so entitled his entire life that he hasn't had to care about the repercussions and the consequences of his actions. But now that it's on full stage for the world to see, it is glaringly obvious. If you recall last year when Donald Trump had a visitor to the White House and he complimented it on his English, and this nation state leader, a prime minister, a president, he corrected Donald Trump to say, well, English is our native language. It's consistent foot in mouth. But at this point, he might as well just leave the shoe in the mouth, because it would be much more convenient for everybody.
Well, last question on Trump, I promise. But Donald Trump's father was, in fact, 100% German. But I only learned today that his middle name was Christ. And that maybe is one of the sources of this messianic madness of which Donald Trump appears to be possessed. But you mentioned President Maduro, who languishes in the dungeon in which Jeffrey Epstein perished, is of course now yesterday's news, the day before yesterday's news, just like the Epstein affair itself. But if I were the head of state in Iran, I'd be very careful tonight and tomorrow night and the night after that, because it seems to me that notwithstanding the deliberately deceitful statements about not attacking Iran, Donald Trump is ready to attack Iran. If you look, as I do, and I know that you do, at the placing of American military assets around the world, in the Middle East, the flight plans of tankers and so on, they're all pointing at an attack on Iran, and maybe an attempt at a Maduro, at a decapitation strike. For heaven knows, you certainly do. The United States is not in a position to invade and occupy Iran. What do you think is going on that track?
Well, you are correct, sir, in that if you just look at open source intelligence and anything you can see in the open media, the placement of naval assets, as we know, the USS Gerald Ford was moved to the Caribbean. We had to make some adjustments, and now the USS Ronald Reagan is heading there or is already afloat at sea with its capabilities and everything that comes with it. In addition to all of the intelligence capabilities, signals intelligence, geographic intelligence, all the intelligence entities that go into that are all positioned looking at Iran with all available assets pointed at Iran. So you're absolutely right. The what's coming out of Donald Trump's mouth, and that there won't be or that we won't, does not match, the visual does not match the audio. And the decapitation strike, similar to what we saw in Venezuela, what we may see in Iran, is that these further destabilize the region. They further destabilize the situation. And to think that if we were going to conduct a decapitation strike in Iran, that there won't be catastrophic consequences for the US in the region directly, but also potentially in our own hemisphere, on our homeland, then it's a miscalculation. And I think that it would be a grave error to think that we can bully and strike with impunity like Israel does to its neighbors and think that there won't be consequences. I was in Israel during the days war between Iran and Israel and witnessed the daily bombardment of ballistic missiles. I have been on the sending end of ballistic missiles. Until that point, I had never been on the receiving end of a ballistic missile. And when a ballistic missile falls out of the sky and is the size of a Volkswagen and it lands in the parking lot next to you, regardless of what the defenses are for the Iron Dome, there's consequences. And we know that Israel expended upwards of $30 million in armament, which they have not replaced, which they have not repositioned, to where if we strike the hornet's nest, Israel will pay gravely for a return strike, and so will we. This is not a game. And for a man that has never been to war, that has never seen the cost of conflict, for him to constantly rattle the saber, it's disingenuous to the world and to the American people. And if we strike Iran with a decapitation strike, there will be consequences diplomatically, militarily, geographically in the region. And the United States is not ready for such a response when American soldiers are returning home in flag-draped coffins in mass number because of a military action that the world scratches its head at.
Donald Trump would call them losers when they did. The big enchilada from your recent experience is, of course, Gaza. Now, I don't really have words to describe this board of peace that Donald Trump is assembling. All the countries that he would normally be able to order around have declined the offer. But Lukashenko of Belarusia is going, and Vietnam is going. And President Putin has been invited and is considering it. Personally, I hope in those cases they all do join the board of peace. I think the Palestinian people will be safer if their voice has to be taken into account in this boardroom that Trump is assembling. But the purport of it, the $1 billion that you've got to pony up in order to join it. All reeks of something else other than peace in Gaza, doesn't it? It reeks of some kind of new United Nations, some kind of land grab, not by Israel this time, but by the United States. I would think Netanyahu himself must be a trifle anxious because control, sovereignty over the Gaza Strip is rather inexorably moving out of his hands. What's your take on that?
So during my time in Gaza and working directly with the IDF and the highest positions of the headquarters within the Coordinating Office of the Governance Activities in the Territories, or COGAT, which is this mysterious arm of the Ministry of Defense that controls everything in Gaza, I saw it with my own eyes on a large map in their joint unified headquarters in Beersheba, where we had a meeting to discuss the opening of sites. And this plan for this rebuild, for this displacement of the Palestinian people to the south, to this total destruction and rebuilding, this has been a plan in the works. Project Sunrise, which is the project that Jared Kushner penned, that is now what this Board of Peace will oversee in the reconstruction, is not something that came from the ashes of Gaza in current state. This was planned before October 7th. And what we're seeing now is that the reason it was palatable and why Netanyahu openly welcomed US playing in it is because he anticipated in the end he would get to maintain control of the crime scene, that he would continue to hold Gaza at bay, either forcefully displace or kill everyone within the Gaza enclave. And now it's almost as if Donald Trump didn't read the last page of the act of the play. And now he's coming in with the get out of the way. I'm going to show you how we really do real estate. And Netanyahu is almost like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like that's not, remember, that's not what we're really doing here. So we see this because the Israeli government has pushed back against this Board of Peace, where we see real players coming into this Board of Peace that can make a change, where you would have representation. And quite frankly, as you put it so well, Gaza would be better under the supervisory role of people like Putin and Erdogan and Sisi, rather than being under the grip of Israel. But Israel has already pushed back vehemently against this Board of Peace. Who's on it? Who will be on it? Who can be on it? Who can't be on it? What the phases will be. And let's remember, we blew through phase 1 and phase 2 without an actual ceasefire and without the implementation of full unrestricted aid into Gaza. To this day, there is a disheartening minimal amount of aid that's still going into Gaza. The Rafah border is not open. So here we are rushing to rebuild. That will mean the forced displacement. Right now, current open source satellite imagery of Gaza, in the very places that I stood in southern Rafah, you will see the construction of a large encampment. This encampment will house every surviving Palestinian in the south. They are moving forward with this plan. And I think that there's going to be a lot of rub going forward between Netanyahu and Trump on what the true intention of how Gaza will end up. And we're going to see that come out in the coming weeks and days, on that friction between Israel and the US government, namely between Netanyahu and Trump. I would caution all viewers out there to, don't lose sight of Gaza. Don't lose sight of Palestine, and watch the friction that's going to come when you have money in the billions on the table.
And just finally, en passant, what do you make of a member state of the United Nations literally bulldozing into rubble the headquarters of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, in the heart of Jerusalem? I mean, this seems to defy all logic. How can you be a member of an organization whilst willfully destroying the headquarters of the organization that you're a member of?
Absolutely. I think that Israel is a pariah state. Israel has and is committing a genocide by definition of law, not only by U.S. law, 18 U.S. Code Section 1092, and by UN resolution. They are committing genocide. That is now a fact. That is not a notion of fiction. Israel is a pariah state. They should be put on restriction or put in timeout or kicked out or whatever they call it in fancy terms in the United Nations. And they should be classified as such. They are violating every international law, every international principle, and they're doing it in a very bombastic way where they are just shoving it in everyone's face. The world has now seen in Gaza City, where you have academics that are now analyzing the true death toll that may be over 600,000. We see the complete and utter destruction of the terrain. We see that Palestinians to this day are dying of hypothermia and disease and starvation, to include continued bombing. And now in the West Bank, they openly just demolish the UNRWA headquarters, and they do it in a way as if they should be celebrated for it. They should be thanked for what they're doing. They're acting in a way that is so far beyond any type of reasonable behavior that the world should hold them responsible. Israel is a pariah state. Israel should be removed from the United Nations, and there should be international consequences. One being, we don't continue to give them weapons.